Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Sean.
I have to run really fast backwards.
To catch up with yourself?
I have to catch up with myself, and I want to keep moving forward, but I have to look behind to see what might happen from things in the past that could bite me in the butt later.
Yeah.
And
good lessons usually.
Good lesson. Is that hindsight 2020? While running a 440, I don't know what I'm probably making no sense, but people listen to us. They know I make no sense anyway.
It's not about us.
It is not about us. It is not about us. But I was trying to have a little fun because there's something pending in our digital world that will have a big impact on society and business and our personal lives. And it's the wow factor of quantum computing and all that it can bring to do things that our human minds can't do on our own. And with that, there's some risk with cryptography that the cybersecurity industry has been talking about for a while, but I don't know that we have a real good, until now perhaps, a real good way to understand what the impact would be in a way that we can do something about it. And I'm thrilled today to have Clément Jeanjean from SandboxAQ join us to talk a bit about what quantum computing and AI and those technologies together can kind of help us prepare for the future where quantum does exist. And we know the risks, and we can kind of run backwards really fast and get ahead of it. So before we get into the conversation, though, Clément, I want to give you a few moments to share a little bit about yourself for our audience, so they know who you are and some of the things you've done leading yourself to this point with SandboxAQ.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be with you today. So I'm Clément Jeanjean. I lead commercial business globally for the cybersecurity division of SandboxAQ, which is called the QSG group. QSG stands for Quantum Security Group. I guess we'll talk a little bit about what SandboxAQ does, among other things, cryptography management, but also we have two other lines of businesses. And how I came here is it's been an entrepreneurial journey. I have a scientific background. I'm an engineer at the beginning, and I also took political sciences degree after engineering, and right after that I started creating technology companies in different fields, nothing related to quantum at the beginning. One of my most significant companies was a tech startup in the perfume industry, so quite far away from quantum physics. And one of them was CryptoSense. So I co-developed this cryptography management startup company based out of Europe that was acquired by SandboxAQ 8 months ago now. So this is how I joined the Sandbox journey. I was the COO of CryptoSense, mostly in charge of business development. So that's how I'm here today with you guys.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not going to go in the first company, although I am kind of intrigued anyway. But there is so much to talk about this convergence of putting together, for me, like quantum and AI. I think we can write a book about it, maybe 3-7 books. So it's a big picture into the future, as Sean was making fun. Like, why are we doing it now when I don't think we have functional and commercial, definitely quantum computing going on. So what is the perspective that SandboxAQ is having in this big picture?
Yeah, that's correct. So We have a pretty original positioning, I would say, at SandboxAQ, and AQ stands for AI and quantum, because the mission of the company is to exploit the new possibilities that quantum physics and AI offer to solve very difficult problems. And I said quantum physics, so it's not only quantum computers, it's really the low-level physics, the particle physics, combined with AI. And of course, quantum computing is part of the play. So we try to address three main industries and to really change the game in these three verticals. We have one division called simulation and optimization that looks at how this new computational power coming from AI and quantum computers, when they arrive, will be able to run algorithms that today we're not able to run, and how we can leverage this to reduce dramatically the time it takes to develop new drugs, and maybe cure diseases that we're not able to cure today. This industry requires a lot of investment. Developing a new drug, it costs between $1.5 and $2 billion. The failure rate is extremely high because you have to try a lot of things and just, many of them fail. And developing a new drug is very long. We're talking about years and years. So we want to try and improve that. We're not sure that we're gonna be able to do it, but the first results we have only after 1 year are very promising, and we're partnering with very prominent universities in the US and research centers around that. And they are already very impressed with the first results that we were able to put together with these algorithms. And that's even before quantum computing is generally available. So that's the first line of business, simulation and optimization. The second one is cybersecurity, so where I sit, where we help large organizations prepare for the migration to quantum-resistant cryptography. So as you said, quantum computers are going to create opportunities that we probably cannot imagine today, but they also create threats. One of the threats that they create is on the cryptography, let's say part of the cryptography that we've been using for a few decades now, which is the RSA cryptography. So when these computers are going to be available, when we will have fault-tolerant quantum computers, they can use an algorithm called the Shor's algorithm to break this cryptography. And this cryptography is used every day, everywhere. Everything digital uses this type of cryptography. So there's a need for a global upgrade, basically a global update. And regulators, standardization bodies like NIST have started looking at that years ago already. And this is what the cybersecurity division is going after. We are helping big companies, big organizations prepare for that migration. And this is happening now. And I guess we'll talk about that in a minute. That's the second division after simulation and optimization. And the third one is called quantum sensing. And here we develop hardware where we use quantum physics to create new sensing capabilities with two main applications. One is in healthcare, where we develop cardiac magneto sensing devices to improve the accuracy, to improve the speed at which you can run an analysis, on someone who's going through some heart event. And when you need to determine whether it's severe, is it a heart attack, does the patient need surgery or not? Today, this can be very long because you need to prove several assumptions one after another. And we're trying to replace this with this magnetic field sensing device and deliver a diagnosis in something like 1 to 2 minutes. A second type of sensors that we're developing is used for terrestrial navigation. Today, we mostly rely on GPS. Everyone is using GPS. Even the military are using GPS. But GPS is very vulnerable because satellites are vulnerable. Because GPS can be scrambled too. And today, if you go to Ukraine, there's no GPS anymore because it's completely jammed by the Russians. Moreover, GPS doesn't work under the sea. So for submarines, for instance, it doesn't work. And we're developing these terrestrial navigation devices based on quantum physics, so quantum sensors, to back up GPS or replace GPS in places where you cannot use it. So these are the three business units, the three big problems that we're tackling through simulation optimization, cybersecurity, and quantum sensing.
And what? Oh, I'm going to hold the vision. Let's stick with kind of the current state, or perhaps a look into the past, because I mean, as I mentioned as we started talking, that the understanding that cryptography will have some challenges when quantum computing comes around. And forgive me for not knowing the complete difference between physics and computing, but we will face a situation where a good portion of our cryptography no longer stands up to the rigors that we expect it to. And how, obviously the security industry is talking about it, but how are cyber criminals kind of using this understanding to their benefit? Because let's face it, cyber criminals always leverage technology and leverage information and have a view of the future to how they're going to make money as well. What's their view of this?
So there are, I think, several questions in this one. One is, how can quantum computing be exploited someday, and what threat it represents today? And the second question is the timeline, I think. So when do we need to worry about that? So as I said, it's well recognized that when these quantum computers are available, which is not a date that's identified, so we don't know when it's going to happen. There's a global scientific consensus to say that this is happening. Some people say it's going to be in 8 years. Some people say it's going to be in 15 years. Some people say it's going to be in 50. Some people, less and less, say it's never going to happen. But there's a general consensus to say we're looking at something probably between 8 to 12 years before we have these fault-tolerant quantum computers. And that's based on the progress that have been made in recent years. So criminals, when these computers are available, they can break this RSA encryption, so they can access sensitive data. This is not the case today, but what they can start doing is harvest information, so harvest data by eavesdropping, like submarine cables, for instance. So one threat that is well identified today, and people call that the harvest now, decrypt later threat, is that these criminals or state actors could collect data, store it for many, many years. And of course, that means, they will target sensitive data, meaningful data like state secrets, or data that have a very long lifespan, like healthcare data or personal banking details, for instance. So these criminals, they could harvest the data now, store it, keep them in a data center, and then use a quantum computer in 8, 10, 15 years to decrypt that data and use the value that this data would still have. So not all the data, not all the sensitive data that we're dealing with today can be threatened by that, because some of the data in 15 years won't have any value anymore. But again, for the very sensitive, for the long-lasting sensitive data, for the state secrets, for industrial IP, for instance, or geological exploration for oil and gas companies, these data have 30, 40, 50 years of lifespan, and these are at risk. This is the main threat that's identified today. Another one that is not coming directly from attackers, but which is a risk that more and more corporations have identified, is that going through the migration will take time. And when I say time, it's not a couple of years or 3 years. It's generally admitted that for a big bank, the scale is something like 10 years. Because cryptography is everywhere in their IT. They have every possible IT system that have been, ever conceived and designed and produced on Earth. So it's very heterogeneous. And it's a topic that they have never really, needed to address or to manage before, because cryptography was just solid, it was resistant. The keys were long enough. The algorithms are good today. then they're not going to be broken next year, you know. But the fact that cryptography is everywhere and that we have completely digitalized our economy by just spreading cryptography, you know, in all big IT organizations, and with having cryptography coming from many different sources inside an IT, it makes it very difficult just to know what cryptography you have, where cryptography is, where cryptography comes from. So that migration is going to take 10 years. So if you think back, and Sean, you like to walk backwards, think back of this timeline story where we say quantum computers, fault-tolerant quantum computers, might be available in 8, 10, 12 years. And actually, when this happens, we might not know, because the first organization, the first country, you know, that we have this computer, maybe will want to keep this as a secret, because that's a huge advantage. So when this happens, you need to be ready before that. You cannot start the migration when someone says, "Hey guys, I have this computer," because if it needs 10 years, then you're 10 years late, and all your sensitive data is broken and accessible.
Well, you know, I have this picture in my head of the movie Back to the Future, where the characters start disappearing from a picture in the past because they never happen in the future. So I have this really weird vision, but I think it's kind of helped me to get a picture of what we're talking about here. So talking about getting the picture, is there some kind of business, some verticals that are seeing what you're presenting because they embrace it, because they can project themselves into this future and realize that their data, I mean, you throw some example there, but maybe more specific, some other case scenarios, some verticals that are really receptive to this concept?
Yeah, so the federal space, the public sector, is moving really fast, especially in the US, but also in the entire Western world, because regulators, governments have identified this, you know, the development of quantum computers as both a threat for the security of their data, but also as an opportunity, because they can solve these big, complicated problems. So when you deal with, let's say, complex logistics issues like running an army, you know, or running scenario for a war game, probably the first one where there's a valid quantum computer running, that's going to be a huge advantage. So governments, regulators, they have started creating a framework. And in the US, there's been a White House memorandum. State agencies have to move forward. They have to start inventorying the cryptography they're using, building a plan for migration. So this is happening already now. That's the public sector. In the commercial world, financial services are probably the heaviest users of cryptography, which is good for us because that is what protects, you know, your access to your online banking application on your iPhone. So they have a lot of cryptography, and they have a lot of sensitive data, and of course they're, you know, managing your money and our money. So they're very sensitive to that, and the journey has started there too. Sorry. So in the US, large banks, they are all moving forward and building a plan to migrate to post-quantum cryptography, again because they know it's going to take 10 years, and that they have to start now, and also because they're seeing short-term benefits in getting this capability of inventorying cryptography, getting visibility. Maybe we can say a word about that. So financial services, clearly, healthcare industries are very interested in this. They're not as mature in the journey as the financial services. Telcos, to secure their networks, because they're operating these physical networks where they're using a lot of cryptography also to authenticate communications and authenticate users, which is going to be a vulnerable point to quantum computers. So telcos are very interested in starting upgrading their network now, also because they know it's going to take a few years. And then we're seeing a longer tail of other verticals where the maturity is starting, especially around OT or IoT. like the automotive business, because a car today is a big OT with 4 wheels, and a car, when you sell a car, it's going to be on the market or on the roads for maybe 15, 20 years. So that's part of these objects that you need to think now about how you're going to update them in 10, 12, 15 years. Oil and gas are interested in this too. And some of these verticals, they're also looking at the opportunities, that they can get from quantum computing. Like, can they improve exploration for oil and gas or drilling, scenario? And for healthcare, of course, can they improve the way they discover drugs? So this is the landscape basically today, as we see it at SandboxAQ.
So I love that broad view of the different sectors and the things they have to think about. One thing that's coming to mind, I mean, I'm the ops guy generally. I everything looks like a project to me, with some timeline and some outcomes at the end. And what I'm trying to figure out here is, as the telcos and the oil and gas and automotive industries recognize they need to do something now, and we'll touch on why now they have to do something in a moment. But I guess what I'm wondering is, because SandboxAQ and the cybersecurity division is about managing cryptography. So my question immediately in my mind is, do they manage cryptography now? Is it just a free-for-all? What does that world look like? And then what does it need to shift and transition into to really get ahead of this?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to, when you look at these organizations, it's fair to say that cryptography has been left behind in the entire digital transformation that we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, which is adopting agility and what's called DevOps. When you merge basically development and operations, or you bring them very close together, so that you can deliver new features and new releases of your product really fast. Cryptography has been left behind that because it was not really needed. You didn't need to be agile with cryptography because, again, the keys were long enough, the algorithms were good. So one of the things we talk a lot about with our customers today is how we can bring cryptography to the agile era, because the way they're managing their IT is through more and more automations, more and more large databases, data lakes, solutions like software solutions integrated all together, so that you can deal with a massive amount of information, data, and make it actionable. Cryptography is not there yet. So customers, they use a lot of cryptography keys, they use certificates, they have some platforms to issue keys, to issue certificates, but a lot of the keys that they have come from different places, come from open source components, come from dependencies, vendor software, and that's the case for keys and certificates. So they don't really have the entire visibility on where these keys and certificates are coming from. Same with cryptographic operations. So every time one application encrypts data, decrypts data, signs an operation, every time someone authenticates, and by someone I mean it can be a human being, or it can be one application talking to another application. So every time there's cryptography coming into play, and that cryptography can come from many, many different places, again, in the organization. Today, they don't have that visibility, and this is what we're building with them. We are providing them with an enterprise software that connects, integrates with the other ones, and gives this visibility on what cryptography they have inside their IT today. And that's the first step. When you look at what NIST says, what Homeland Security recommends, what Gartner recommends in this migration towards modern cryptography management and quantum-ready cryptography, in the end, the first step is to build an inventory, which makes total sense. And there's nothing groundbreaking here, because you cannot change, you cannot manage what you don't know. So today, most of these organizations are lacking this visibility, this comprehensive visibility on cryptography that they have. And that's the first issue that we solve with them, providing visibility and observability.
So I want to go back to because I kind of always think about people. That's what I do. I think about how people are going to digest this. And so one of the thing is to say, you know, why now? And I know you already talked a little bit about this, but also thinking like, are other sector like cybersecurity in general, like, you know, everybody now is talking artificial intelligence is going to resolve a lot of problem, also creating a lot of problem because the bad guys use it as well. So what I'm thinking of, like, do you see this to be a big shake to not just cryptography on its own, which is part of the big picture of cybersecurity, but is like a lot of the cybersecurity now going to become obsolete unless we do something right now? I don't know if it's a question that makes sense, but it's kind of in my head.
No, it does make sense clearly. So quantum computers, for what we know, are good at solving specific problems. So you cannot ask everything to a quantum computer. So as far as we know, you will not have a super GPT-4, you know, powered by a quantum computer that can break any security.
Well, AI too is not general, right? So you can't
Absolutely.
ask anything.
Yeah. So this problem around cryptography is the one that has been identified clearly because there's this algorithm that was discovered by a guy called Peter Shor in 1994 that allows to basically factor very large prime numbers, which is the big problem that existing computers cannot solve. Even if you were able to take all the computational power available on Earth today, breaking one of these algorithms would take thousands, if not more, of years. And this is what we call secure. It's not unbreakable, but with the existing means, it's going to take so much time to break that, you know, God knows where we'll be in 5,000 years. And of course, the data doesn't have any value. So what the quantum computers allow to do is break this existing cryptography in a matter of maybe hours or maybe days, which of course makes them much more relevant. Other dimensions of cybersecurity are not directly threatened by that, as far as we know today.
So I'm gonna go back to the ops because that's where I like to live. And the security suite, the SandboxAQ security suite, is comprised of many elements riding on top of an architecture. And what I'd like for you to do, if you can maybe paint a visual picture for us with words, how this fits into an organization. There's the discovery and inventory and management all the way through to remediation. How, maybe the first question is, who in the organization kind of oversees this? Who are you speaking with to tackle this problem in the organization? And how does that fit into their processes and their teams and existing technologies?
Yeah, so typically our customer is the CISO or the CISO team, so the Chief Information Security Officer in an organization. As you said, our software is like many cybersecurity software, basically built on 3 modules. One is about discovery, so collecting information from the IT. The second one is storing the data that we've collected, controlling the data, running analysis on the data, issuing reports, automating the creation of reports like policy enforcement reports or performance reports. And the third block, so after discovery and control, the third block is remediation. The way it's deployed today with our customers, it's mostly on-premise because the nature of the data that we collect, in most cases, is highly sensitive. You know, information about how a big bank encrypts data or manages keys is not information that they want to send in the cloud. So the software is deployed on-premise. And one of the key considerations or needs that our customers have beyond the core features that I've just described, so inventorying cryptography, analyzing it, and remediating, is around integrations. because again, they don't want to deploy something that's going to be a standalone system with its own dashboard and that is going to require dedicated workloads. That doesn't work today in a big IT organization. All of them are moving to DevOps. All of them are moving to automation. So we have to integrate our software with their existing IT management solutions. So typically, ServiceNow, for instance, typically Jira, to manage tickets or remediation, or Splunk, Elastic, this kind of thing. That's for the IT management system. Even for the inventory part, so collecting information from their IT, they want us to integrate with the systems they already have. So when they have an endpoint manager, of course, we will integrate with the endpoint manager and we will leverage the existing scanners or sensors that they have deployed across their maybe 500,000 endpoints or 1 million endpoints. We will leverage these existing sensors to collect information about cryptography, either by just taking the data that's already available or by deploying an additional package on this sensor. We have integrations with a very widely deployed solution called Tanium, for instance, in the endpoint management sphere. So this ability to integrate with existing solutions is really key to our customers. And maybe I can provide a little bit more detail about what type of information we collect, how we build this inventory, because an inventory is only as good as it is comprehensive. If you're missing half of the cryptography that you're supposed to monitor, then there's no point in having an inventory. So we combine different discovery tools and 3 dimensions, as we like to describe it. We collect information from the network. So we look at how information is encrypted when it travels on the network with something that's called a network analyzer. Then we collect information from file systems or containers with a discovery tool that's called the file system analyzer. And this one parses files and looks for keys, certificates, cryptographic libraries, and it's trained to identify those cryptographic artifacts, those interesting artifacts. That's the second analyzer that we have. So network analyzer, file system analyzer. The third one is called an application analyzer. And this one looks at how cryptography is performed inside application at runtime. It doesn't mean in production. Runtime, in all cases, it's in pre-production or in development environments. But what's interesting here is that when you are able to observe how applications do cryptography, so how your data is encrypted, decrypted, how application authenticates between one another, this is where you have this very deep visibility about where cryptography comes from. Is it coming from a third-party component? Is it in your code? Is it a dependency? So by combining those 3 analyzers, network analyzer, file system analyzer, and application analyzer, that's what we call a 3-dimensional inventory, because you have a very flat and broad coverage across all file systems, if needed, and all your endpoints. And you have a very deep visibility inside where application comes from in your workloads. And that's very specific to the security suite at SandboxAQ.
I love that. I can, granted, I saw some of the diagrams on your website, but I can totally picture what you just described, which is fantastic. And I know Marco probably wants to go, but I'm going to ask another question as well. Just because some of the things we talked about early on were the migration aspects of this. And we talked about needing to start now if you're gonna end up in the right place in time. So what does that migration look like from SandboxAQ's perspective? Where do our organizations usually start? I'm going to guess inventory, but kind of describe the flow and how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, so clearly the priority today is to start with the inventory. So creating this capability. It's within large organizations, it's already a multi-year project. But of course, it doesn't make a lot of sense to create the inventory if you do not strategize the remediation behind that, because you have all these problems and how are you going to solve them? So we have this remediation module that's available in preview for customers today, not for it's a general availability or deployment. What we're looking at here is not automating the remediation entirely, because our customers are not willing or not ready. Maybe someday they will be, but they're not ready to leave a software decide how this cryptographic operation would be replaced by another, using a different algorithm. So we rather talk about semi-automated remediation or suggested remediation, because there has to be today a human intervention, before they change the way that they use cryptography. We have several ways of doing that. We can, for instance, wrap an existing cryptographic operation with an additional layer of cryptography, with quantum-resistant cryptography, for instance. We can also envision to redirect calls that an application makes to its cryptographic library. So since we see these operations with our application analyzer, we can just see the call happening and redirect it to a library that would contain these quantum-resistant algorithms. These are just two examples among several ways that we have to remediate. But in terms of priority and timeline, our customers today are really focused on building the inventory and having this continuous monitoring. Because when we talk about an inventory, it's not just a one-off thing that you want to do, because of course, if you do the inventory, that's going to take quite some time. But the next month, your cryptography has changed. You have new keys, new certificates, new code that your developers have written. So you need to build this capability as a continuous monitoring and continuous inventory.
Yeah, which continuous integration and delivery.
Absolutely.
Which,
yeah.
That's where it all boils down to, right? If you can't deliver stuff in an agile way, because you're stuck trying to figure out cryptography, you're kind of hosed. What do you think?
Yeah,
Marco?
and so just to that point, because that's straight to the point with our more mature customers, where they deploy our solution directly in their CI/CD toolchain, where they already have a series of tests like security, quality on the code, and the sandbox test becomes just one of them. And we both built the inventory of cryptography before the code goes in production, and we control the content of the inventory. And this brings me back to one thing I mentioned before, which are the short-term benefits of doing that now. If you're able to monitor your cryptography and control your cryptography today, you can solve issues that are much more painful now than the quantum threat and the migration itself. Things around compliance. So more and more, compliance standards include ways to encrypt data, ways to manage keys. It's very, very difficult, given the complexity, given the hybrid dimension of any IT system today. It's very difficult to demonstrate your compliance with these standards with Excel spreadsheets and manual processes. It just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't scale. So every existing process relying on this needs also an upgrade for cryptography. And several of our customers, including big customers today, they started the project with us, not because of the quantum threat, but because they had a compliance issue, or they had a policy enforcement issue. They have this security policy where there's an entire chapter about what cryptography they can use, what cryptography they cannot use. But then they rely on just manual reporting, from business owners, from teams, to make sure that the policy is enforced. Again, that doesn't scale. And we have big projects with big banks where we're covering several thousands of applications where they suspect very strongly that some of the cryptography inside some of these applications does not enforce the latest standard of cryptography that they want to see inside their applications and their workloads. So we're helping them solve this today in the CI/CD toolchain. And then the quantum threat, becomes part of the project, because they say, oh, okay, we're deploying this cryptography management tool, and we're going to kill several birds, with the same stone. We're going to solve this compliance issue. We're going to have a better policy enforcement. We will have more visibility on certificates. So we will reduce the number of outages, created by certificate expiring. And we are also paving the way for the quantum migration.
Well, you kind of went where I was going to go. So the relationship with the public sector and also policy and regulation that, as we know, it drives many times cybersecurity. You do it because you have to do it. But also, I think there is definitely a role into the government in having a vision and a plan into this. You mentioned NIST, for example, which, it's kind of like the standard. So what's your relationship with government, and do you see regulation actually coming along with your message and your mission and vision?
Yeah, so governments in, let's say, all developed countries have started looking at quantum and specifically the threat on cryptography, or are starting to look at that. And we have ongoing conversations with most of them because we're kind of, let's say, highly visible in that field. Naturally, SandboxAQ being a US company, there are a lot of discussions with federal agencies in the US government. Some contracts have even been made public at the beginning of this year. But also in the, let's say, US allied sphere, we're having a lot of conversations, both with government, with defense organization, with state agencies and regulators. And that's a very constructive process where we talk about what the technology can do, what it cannot do, how we've started these migration projects with our existing customers, because the regulators, they don't want to create something in the vacuum. So they look at how industrials who have started the journey are doing it, and that feeds the way they're thinking about the future regulation. We have been selected by NIST, so the US standardization body, to be part of their cybersecurity center of excellence with, I think, 15 other industrials, including Amazon, Samsung, very large companies, Microsoft, to work on what the migration framework should be. And so it's not about pushing our product and saying our solution is better than the other ones. We have competitors there too, and we're very happy to be in that group with them. It's really to build the new framework together, so to make sure that industrials will be able to migrate as smoothly as possible and in a meaningful way, and that we are solving the problem in the end. And that's something that we're very involved into this relationship with NIST.
And I think as we were talking about the software delivery model and life cycle, and when we talk about policy, first thing that comes to mind is SBOM, the software bill of materials. Another key piece, another important part of what government's looking at to help raise the security posture of all software components. Yeah, so clearly no lack of need and drive, and perhaps maybe some triggers coming soon to really enforce the need here. I want to start wrapping, and I know you have the security suite is out. People can get a preview, they can get a demo. I mean, clearly start the migration now. That's the message I'm hearing, to get that visibility, get the assessment and the analysis so that you can take some remediation actions within your environment. Plug it into ServiceNow and Atlassian and see where you're sitting, right? So how do people actually do that? Come on.
So the discovery and the control center modules can be deployed at scale today. We're deploying it in project with several hundreds of thousands of endpoints covered in very large organizations. The remediation part, as I said, is available in preview today. A very simple way to do that is to get in touch with us, start a discussion about what the problems are around cryptography. And it can be, I want to start this quantum migration now, or I want to understand, how to do it, where to start with, what do I need to prioritize, and we help organizations with these questions as well. It can be something around, okay, there's this quantum thing on the horizon that the board has identified, we need to address that. but we also have a key management problem, or we also have an issue with policy enforcement. So how can we build a project where we get these, short-term benefits, low-hanging fruits, business value, in 1 year, in 2 years, and at the same time, we will be ready for the quantum migration when needed, and starting probably maybe in 3 years, something like that. Usually, we start with again a very standard enterprise software sales motion, where we deploy a proof of value usually in a lab environment where the customer can test our product. Make sure that the features actually deliver the value that we say it delivers, So we work a lot with the customers to understand their use cases. That's really key in the process, and what they expect in terms of business benefits. Once we've done that and we've proven the value, then we engage into a first deployment in production. And as with every deployment in production, it starts with a very limited parameter, like a pilot, and then we scale. With the ambition, all of our customers have the ambition to cover not 100% of their IT, because that doesn't make sense, but something like 80%, which is almost everything, apart from the exceptions or the non-sensitive data at all.
Yeah. And when you do the proof of value, do you include some of the integrations as well to kind of show how it fits in?
Yeah, that's one of the things we do if the expected benefit is to make sure that the organization can create this additional control in their CI/CD toolchain, for instance. Then clearly we will focus the POV, the proof of value, on the integration with their Jenkins pipeline, for instance, and make sure that we can have this loop back to the developers to fix non-compliant cryptography or cryptography that is a policy breach for the organization, and also build the inventory that would be needed for migration later on.
I love it.
Wow, a lot to think about.
I know.
Let's see, for once we think ahead. Really,
that's right.
Like as human, we're not that good at doing that.
But you have to run backwards with looking back toward the problem, because I think, if, as with most things, cybersecurity, right? If you get asked a question and the answer is I don't know, you're in trouble. So the first is having a clear view of what the situation is, so you can at least answer that, and how you choose to address whatever you uncover there is up for the business to decide based on their own situation. But and I don't know is not enough, in my opinion. So. All right. Well, come on. It's an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Great to hear this SandboxAQ story, and congratulations on the delivery of the security suite and the new division, and all that has to come, all the goodness coming from the three divisions, sensing and simulation and cyber all together. I'm excited to see where things head for SandboxAQ as a whole.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. It's been my pleasure to be with you today, and I'll be happy to do that again anytime.
Lovely.
If you want to know more or deep dive on one of these topics.
It's a big conversation. I mean, my head is spinning into much larger scenarios, and how this is going to apply to everything really in our life, in our business, and the way we behave. Just kind of like another digital revolution, maybe even bigger than what we've lived so far, and that's a lot already. So just a reminder to everyone that all the links and to learn more and take action and get in touch with SandboxAQ will be into the page that we're dedicating to this conversation, and hopefully again many more, because there is a lot to talk about. So again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, share ITSP Magazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. Thank you for listening.